Hi everyone, and welcome to the second part of this painting process. In this video, you'll see the early development of the candlestick and its candle, along with part of the decorative goblet. Step by step, the composition begins to take shape as more details and light are added. At the end of this series, I'll also share a complete video showing the entire process in a shorter, more condensed format. That way, you'll be able to choose between watching the full, slower process or a faster overview of the painting from beginning to end. After cleaning my palette, I mix burnt sienna with black to create the first base layer for the background of the entire painting. Most of the time, I begin by filling in the background before moving on to the rest of the composition. I usually apply between 1 and 3 coats, depending on how well the paint covers the surface and how even the color appears. It's been several years since I created many paintings. During that time, I was focused on other business ventures, but I always knew I wanted to return to my career as an artist. Throughout this video, you'll see a few drawings I began working on last year, as I gradually regained confidence and control after such a long break. Until now, I had painted almost exclusively in oils, so switching to acrylics has been a bit challenging for me. I'm also working with a very limited palette, only the 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, along with white, burnt sienna, and black. I don't use any other colors. Every mixture you see is created from these few pigments. Before long, I hope to begin creating new oil paintings using a broader palette, allowing me to explore an even wider range of color, depth, and atmosphere. For the background, I usually avoid using a very small brush unless it's truly difficult to reach an area without crossing the outline. In those cases, I switch to a finer brush. At this stage, there's no need to be overly precise around the edges. This is only the first layer, and anything that isn't quite right can be corrected later as more paint is applied and the painting gradually develops. For this type of painting, I usually prefer to begin with a detailed drawing. It allows me to establish the composition before adding color. With other subjects, especially portraits, I often work quite differently. Instead of relying on a detailed drawing, I paint directly with the brush, letting the colors gradually reveal the form of the face. In this section of the background, I use more burnt sienna and yellow than before, along with a small amount of red. This helps preserve the earthy character of the color while shifting it slightly toward a warmer orange. As I gradually move closer to the candlelight, I continue adding more yellow to lighten the mixture. I also include a touch of red and burnt sienna so the area doesn't become too bright, while still remaining noticeably lighter than the parts of the background that are farther away from the candle. This gradual transition helps create a more natural glow, allowing the light to spread softly across the painting. For the candle, I use exactly the same colors, mostly yellow, with a small touch of red and an even smaller amount of burnt sienna. As I build up the light, I simply add more yellow to create brighter values. This is also the stage where I begin using white. I apply it to the brightest areas of the candle and, above all, to the flame itself, where I use pure white for the most intense highlights. I work this way because the lighting often changes throughout the painting process. As the composition develops, I may adjust the intensity of the light several times to achieve the effect I'm looking for. To make those adjustments, I rely on glazing, one of the most valued techniques in traditional easel painting. By applying thin, transparent layers of color, it's possible to gradually modify the tone and depth without completely covering the layers underneath. The old masters often built their paintings with multiple glazes, one over another, creating remarkable richness, subtle color transitions, and an extraordinary sense of transparency. For the candlestick, I begin with the same color mixture used in the background surrounding the candle. This time, however, I add a little more black to create the deeper shadows. For the highlights and reflections, I use the same warm colors as the candle, allowing the brighter areas to echo the candlelight. This contrast between dark values and luminous reflections is what gradually gives the object its sense of volume. As the layers develop, the surface begins to resemble the material it represents, a bronze candlestick with subtle copper-like tones shaped by the warm glow of the flame. To deepen some of the darker areas, I apply thin glazes made from a mixture of black and burnt sienna, adjusting the balance between the two pigments depending on how dark I want each section to become. I often repeat this process several times. First, I strengthen the highlights, and then I apply another glaze to subtly adjust the color and bring the painting together. For example, later in the painting process, I glaze the surface of the table with a mixture of red and burnt sienna. This creates a unified atmosphere across the entire surface. The underlying colors remain visible through the transparent layer, allowing me to re-establish the brightest highlights where the light falls, while deepening the shadows in the areas farther from the light source. I enjoy working this way. To me, it's part of the magic of painting, and one of the things that sets it apart from photography, or even from reality itself. As an artist, you're free to create your own visual language, invent your own relationships between light and shadow, and shape the atmosphere according to your own vision, much as Caravaggio did in his paintings. I apply that same glaze to the candle as well. You can see how it enriches the color while creating a transparent layer that allows the underlying paint to remain visible. Rather than covering what's already there, the glaze subtly transforms its appearance and helps unify the different tones. This is only the initial layer. There is still a great deal to refine, correct, and adjust as the painting develops, always working toward the effect and level of detail I'm looking for, until I feel the piece is complete. I don't aim to reproduce a photograph exactly, because to me that would take away the purpose of the painting process itself. I want the image to feel convincing and true to life, while still remaining unmistakably a painting, my own interpretation of reality, seen through my own eyes. This is essentially the same approach I use for every element in the composition. A little later in the process, you can see the goblet taking shape. Since it's made of glass, it needs to reflect the objects around it, but for the most part, it should reveal the background, as that has the greatest influence on its appearance because of its transparency. You can also see that I've added pure white, straight from the tube, to the brightest highlights. With that, I come to the end of this second video. I hope you've enjoyed following this part of the painting process. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think a painting should reproduce reality as faithfully as possible? Or should it reinterpret reality through the artist's own vision? Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate your time and support. Until the next video, have a wonderful day. Grace and peace.